Well, during last night's program, I brought you the breaking news about the reclassification of those 2 COVID cases here in Melbourne, the 2 false positives, the beast of a virus, not so much of a beast anymore. Both of the cases had been cited by Brett Sutton as fleeting contact, the whole reason why we needed to be shut down for 2 weeks in Victoria. But it's not what it appears anymore, is it? For more on this, I'm joined from Melbourne by Liberal MP, Victorian Liberal MP Tim Smith. Tim, Jeff Kennett, former Premier here in Victoria, has labelled this sort of a faulty towers example of failure, but that at least implies it's funny. This is not funny. I bet you've had as many angry and indeed teary businesses contact you as I have.
Yeah, I have, Peter, and good evening. People I don't think quite realise how soul-destroying this is for so many businesses who are doing it so hard. Again, now, we're up to 166 days of lockdown in Victoria since the pandemic began. And for viewers around Australia, I know you've been empathetic and I know you've sent well wishes to Victorian friends and family. But if you're not here, you don't really understand how bad it is. And I don't think people quite understand what's happening to the social fabric of Melbourne. There's the business component, which is immensely difficult for so many people, particularly in the private sector. But it's the social fabric, indeed the soul of Melbourne, that I think is being terribly undermined by a government that's hell-bent on terrifying us. And that is having some dramatic impacts on the way Melburnians are interacting with one another and the way the place feels to live. It's not a pleasant place at the moment. And one of my biggest bugbears with this government is that I think that one of the reasons why Melbourne's social fabric is changing, why the very soul of the place is changing, is because we've got a government that is using ridiculous language, inflammatory language, language that doesn't stand up to scrutiny in order to terrify us in the desperate attempt to persuade us that another week of lockdown is in the public and indeed the state's best interests. And I take a very strong view that it is not in the state's best interests, because we have less cases now than we did when we came out of that horrendous 4-month-long lockdown on the 27th of October last year.
Yeah, but just on this point, you're picking up there, terror throughout history is used to make a population submit. So the language at the start of last week, when they went into that first 7-day period, was very inflammatory. Now, reportedly, come as early as Wednesday morning, some are saying Tuesday, the government knew that these false positives were there, right? So they knew that this was not a beast of a virus. All the experts were saying that. I had them on my show and they've been in the media. The experts were saying that the government didn't admit it. They only admit it today. Late last night, they put out the press release, but they're only admitting it now after they've got their extra week of lockdown. And I would argue the reason they need the 2 weeks of lockdown is contact tracing yet again have let us down. Now, when are we ever going to get the truth out of this government?
Well, you're absolutely right. And that was essentially what Brett Sutton said today at the press conference. When asked, the Chief Health Officer was asked, why on earth are we still going to be locked down for another week when our average cases per day is 4.6, when the threshold to leave lockdown last October was to have less cases per day than 5. Well, we're currently at that. And the Chief Health Officer was asked that this morning, and his answer was, we need more time. Well, that is an answer that suggests that, once again, the contact tracing is not up to scratch, is behind the 8 ball, is just simply not good enough. And going to your point, there's going to need to be a Royal Commission into this response by the Victorian government to the pandemic to get to the bottom of why Victoria has been so much different to the rest of Australia. And I tell you what, Peter,
if I see another... Tim, let me just jump in there. I know you're close to Josh Frydenberg and a lot of those Liberals. Why aren't they giving you the Royal Commission? Why isn't the federal government? A lot of blood and treasure have been spent or involved in this COVID crisis. Why aren't your colleagues in Canberra calling a Royal Commission?
Well, I'll let my Canberra colleagues answer for that themselves, but all I can say is that at the state level, our policy is, if we win the next election, we will have a Royal Commission into Victoria's disastrous response to this pandemic that's cost the lives of 801 Victorians, 250,000 jobs and a mental health crisis. That's our commitment, and I think it's a very important commitment because, as you know, we have to get to the truth of this.
Yeah, I think you're hardworking, Tim, and I'm happy to have you on the show anytime, but I don't think many Victorians tonight think you guys have got a snowball's chance in the proverbial of winning the next election, even as bad as Victoria is now. Why on earth should people vote for you?
Because we'll tell the truth to begin with. We'll be open, accountable. We'll bring decency back to the Victorian government. I'll stand here and tell you when something's gone wrong and explain to you why it's gone wrong and how we can improve it. Compare that with the current mob, who are just perpetual liars, absolute liars, who you saw last year. You know, all of them went to the code inquiry and said, I don't recall who was the decision maker that got in the dodgy private security that caused the second wave. I don't recall who said no to the Prime Minister's offer of the use of the Australian Defence Force to run hotel quarantine. I mean, Peter, honesty is important in government, and this Labor government continuously lies. We've seen that this week. Oh, well, this is a beast of a virus. This virus can walk down Clarendon Street. This is the most dangerous form of COVID that exists in the world. Well, lo and behold, the day after, Peta Credlin and a host of other infectious disease experts says, actually, what Jerome Weinmar and Brett Sutton and the acting Premier said was absolute garbage. Now, these people are using lies to terrify the people. Now, I can guarantee you the Victorian Liberal Party will never, ever behave like that in office. And I say to the people who are watching tonight, trust us because we're decent people who'll stand up for you.
All right, well, I think you've got a big job ahead of you to cut through in all of this, Tim Smith, but I wish you luck. Thank you for coming on Credlin.
Thanks, Peter.